What's going on, guys? We are back in the shop today, and it is finally time to start figuring out the turbo kit. Now, I have got everything pretty well mocked up. There's a couple issues that we've got to get through, but I built a little support out here. This is where we're going to mount the turbo. And then I realized that I made a horrible mistake. By pushing this out here, we can no longer, I don't know, I'll have to check. We'll have to see if we can still get an engine hoist all the way in to lift the engine up and do everything we need to do. If not, I'm going to end up having to cut this and sleeve it with some bolts through there or something, so that way we can take this front piece on and off. I also ran into another issue with the headers, which when you tighten them down, they're still kind of loose. And you think, well, how could that be? That's a combination of two things. Number one, we have got these awesome bolts that we got from Proform Parts. They're wedge locking. I've used these on the Nova. I really like these bolts because they lock on, they don't loosen up everything. And then I think they're slightly longer than a factory bolt, which wouldn't be a big deal if you take a look at the flanges. And if you notice, the flange thickness of the headers we're using and the flange thickness of the headers we were using, there's probably a 1/4 of an inch there in difference. I mean, it's pretty large. So what's happening is the flange isn't thick enough. Flange isn't thick enough to get the bolt all the way in. Now, I don't have header gaskets in there yet, but we're going to use the multi-layer steel. I'm going to pick those up today, and they're not that thick. So we are going to have to probably put washers on the outside of all the bolts to get it to sit tight and flush in there. But before we get too wild into this and I start building a turbo kit, I have got the dash bar cut out and I've got the steering column in place, so that way it looks like the majority of stuff that's going to be any sort of in our way for the turbo kit is already in place. But before we do all that, we've got a set of scales. I want to go ahead and see what the weight is looking like right now, because I know we still have a lot of parts to go on. The major stuff, we could set the turbo down right here. We could put the center section in the trunk or something. We can get it all set up where motor, trains, center section, turbo, the heaviest things are going to be in place, and we can get an idea of the overall weight and see if that changes my mind at all about where I want to put the turbo. You know, that's part of the reason I got these scales, is I wanted to keep track different times, different situations throughout the build, how we're building it, and keep an eye on the weight all the way throughout, because we might find out right now, I can tell you it's going to be very front heavy, and it's probably going to tell us, hey, you need to have rear mount radiator, you need to have everything you possibly can in the trunk. But to be sure of that, we've got scales. Let's find out. So with me in the car right now, we've got the turbo hanging off the front. I've got the center section sitting on the trunk just to kind of give us an idea, and me sitting in the passenger seat. We are 2238. That's a little heavier than I wanted to be, Jack. It's a little heavier considering there is absolutely nothing in here. That's pretty damn heavy, and we're going pretty hot and heavy on the front percentages there. 32 and 23, 55, or 55% on the front right now. But if we put everything in the trunk, rear mount radiator, water box for the intercooler, fuel, battery, I mean, there's probably 300-400 pounds of stuff that's going to go in the back. But I'm slightly concerned because it's pretty heavy. And one thing I do know is that this door does still have the crash bar in it, and this thing weighs probably 75-80 pounds. I mean, we're going to save some in the doors, but we really need to be thinking about where we start placing stuff from here on out to get this weight bias to where we want, and overall weight. I mean, 2237, there's probably 500 pounds more worth of stuff that's got to go in here. Like, that's going to put us at 27, which would put us at 25 without me in it, but we got to cut some weight. I was just over here like sweating, like, man, this thing's really heavy. We still got a lot of weight to put in here, blah, 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 blah. All very true. Here's a couple things I forgot. Those doors, steel doors, glass windows, that one still has the crash bar. Guess what else I forgot about, Brandon? This is an iron block. This isn't the aluminum 332. There's 110 pounds right here when we swap over to the Texas Speed motor. That's 2139 with an aluminum block. That means, can we fit everything else 350 pounds plus whatever we save on the doors, plus these front wheels and tires. Like, I know just on the Nova alone, probably save 15, 20 pounds, if not more. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. This is a little bit harder than I thought. Just gotta figure it out. Let's get it back up in the air. Mallory brought me some washers. We'll see if that's enough to get these bolts to work, and then hopefully by the time we get this thing up in the air, everything put back away from the scales, we can figure out if my gaskets are in and we start building a turbo kit. All right, so we've got the front end set on kind of level. Right now I'm holding the turbo in place. It would come down a little bit because we got the mount sitting on top, so it would come down 1.25 inches, but this is gonna allow me to have this thing center of the front bumper here, and it's pretty much centered to the motor. Everything is pretty close. I know that there is some factory built-in offset, but I don't know how much that offset of the motor accounts for what we've done with the motor plate and the mid plate. So I'm thinking about right here, which what's gonna happen, it's gonna allow me to mark this bar, cut it, weld this mount in place, and then our turbo is gonna be hanging. Now, a couple things I wanna do while we're here is measurements, right? So I need to get the measurement to here, from this bar to here, so I can see how much space I have to work with. And that's gonna also determine how we orient some of this, because if we clock the exhaust housing down, we're gonna have to get pretty low to come up from underneath. If we keep to the side, we might have to do something a little funky. If we do it up top, well, is there enough room? So once I get these measurements and get this bar marked, we'll be able to get it in place. I'm not super pumped about where the hole in the front bumper would be, because it would be directly in the point, the farthest point that sticks out. Maybe we'll just cut this panel out here and do like mesh across it, or we'll drill the big hole that everybody wants to see. Upper and lower control arms off. So it's these two bolts right here. So if you want to take the wheels off, take all it off, we got all new shit to go on. But we've got new uppers, lowers, springs, everything. We can start putting that part of the front end together now that this is held in place. Got it. Nick and I were able to get these control arms kind of hung in place. Unfortunately, we need a spring compressor to get the coil spring in there. So we don't have one of those in this shop. Actually, I'm not even sure that I have one at home. I might, but it might not be the right one that we need to do this. But after drilling and fighting those eBay manifolds up and forwards, and I could not get the holes, and I'm destroying drill bits trying to get it done, I reached out locally. Somebody had a set that they were able to, well, I would say sell me. He didn't even sell it. He said just use it if you need it and replace them. Going in here now, look at that. These manifold bolts fit. What was happening is the spacing was off on the other ones. We couldn't get it. The holes had to be oblong, and yeah, it was just a real pain in the butt. But these right here work. I've got the gaskets in there. One of the things that I learned previously in building stuff and doing stuff, use the gaskets, because like that T6 gasket that Stainless sent us, it's pretty thick, and that thickness is going to make a difference, especially when everything is solid mounted, right? Yes, I know this has some wiggle and some play, but once we attach the rest of the hot side to it, the motor plate, mid plate, everything is solid mounted and plated. So those little things, not having the gaskets in here, not having the gaskets in there, it's going to make a difference, and it will make your life harder when you build it and then try to go back together with it. Well, I have gone off of the deep end. So as you guys can see, we've got some of this stuff out of the way here. I'm not sure exactly how they built the car, but I think I have an idea. And here's where we're going with this. So when I was trying to line up the headers and the V-bands, this side is significantly closer than this side. Not only was this side closer, it wouldn't even allow us to put the V-band clamp on. So what we've done is taken the motor plate bolts out, and then I loosened the mid plate bolts because there was some slack left to right there. We're trying to get this figured out. I think what they did, and based on some measurements that I've taken and everything, I think what they did is they tried to keep the drive shaft centered in the tunnel, right? So when you do that, these 78 Camaros have a 15/16 or damn near an inch offset to the passenger side. They did that for driver legroom. So if you're going to keep the drive shaft centered, the motor is going to be 15/16 or an inch closer to the passenger side. That's kind of why a turbo, I wanted to mount off the front end, because I knew that the motor wasn't going to be dead center. The crank isn't going to be dead center. If they had built it just perfectly straight or perfectly centered inside the frame rails, it would be to one side of the tunnel, and then it may hit the tunnel. There might be other issues. So now that we've gotten a bunch of this sorted out, I think what we're going to do is, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to cut out this motor mount bracket, and we're going to alter that slightly, and then re-drill the holes in that bracket, trim this plate down. What essentially we've tried to do the best I can with measuring everything. I believe we've got this thing pretty squared up and straight. The issue is going to be that ultimately, no matter what, we're always going to be to the passenger side because of the way that the car was originally built and the way the mid plate and everything was put in. So not a big deal. It's just, if you know these things beforehand, it makes other things more helpful. Right now, we're at the point where I feel like the crank, I measured off of these bottom bolts here because I felt like that is in a good place to measure. Those aren't going to really move anywhere. By doing that and then measuring the center line of the crank, that gave us our 15/16 towards the passenger side. So it brought everything, we had to move everything over a little bit. As you can see, I've got something wedged in here. I'm going to work the late night shift tonight to get this right, because you know, I could start building the turbo kit, everything, but I really would like to have this car as best as we can. We're not professional chassis builders. We don't know everything. Everything I'm doing is based off research, asking people. Shout out Chris Stelgis, Hayden. You guys know Hayden is meticulous. Jason Dons. I mean, just all these guys that I'm like kind of leaning on and asking questions like, hey, I'm seeing this. What is this? Blah, 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 blah. And they're like, well, you can do this, you can do this, but it all comes down to everybody builds a car a different way, and it depends on what you're trying to do with it. But the best we can do, since the mid plate is already done, the trans mount is already done, we're going to space this out so it's correct. I'll cut this off, I'll remount that, and hopefully once I do all that work and then pull that bar out, this motor should be a little bit more centered, or at least the correct amount of space. I think we were a little off because I noticed that when we put the motor plate on, it kind of wanted to pull to the passenger side a little bit. So I may have just been a little off there. Hey, look, you're not always going to get it right the first time. You got to be willing to go back and fix it and make it right, or if you can't make it 100% right, make it as best you can. Once I get that done, then we'll be able to clamp the V-band on here, and I'll be able to start building out the turbo kit. I don't know that I talked about the plan for the turbo kit, but I think that this is where we're going to go with it. We're going to come out of here and then 90 into here and down, right? And then we're going to 90 off of here, boom, boom. What this does is this leaves me two places on opposite ends where I can put wastegates. The way will be a primary feed to each wastegate, and then we can have the wastegate dumps just go down. Or if I was really fancy, I could do it back into the exhaust. But what I'm thinking for the exhaust and the way that this setup is going to work for best tight packaging and making it all work is we're going to come off of here and go out the passenger side with a single exhaust, which is going to allow us to do the cold side, come out here, under here, around, up in here. I don't know, I haven't landed on this is the final decision yet, but I'm thinking that this is the way we're going to go. Simplicity, keep it tight packaging, keep pipes away from the ground, keep pipes away from each other, you know, as best we can. Obviously you can only do so much. You would think with this much space, you know, the front end of this thing hangs over 2 feet off of the front of this thing, but once you start putting pipe in here, it fills up fast. Let me pull an all-nighter, and then once I'm done doing that, we'll get to building the turbo kit. If you can't tell by my exhausted demeanor, I was up late last night. But we got the motor moved over just enough so that way we can have some clearance to put this clamp on. We got clearance, and we are good to go. So today's gonna be really exciting because I finally get to start building the hot side. These are like the big pieces that really make it look like a car, and we start getting to see how it's all going to line out. Crazy because throughout this there's so many things you have to consider, like, you know, where is the radiator going to go, where are the lines going to go, where is the oil feed going to come from, where is the oil return going to go. We've got our oil return. It's not quite as downhill as I would like, but when we have suspension travel it should be. So talk to the guys at Stainless. We're going to try to make sure we've got a solution figured out to make sure we're not backing up oil into the turbo. You know, there's general guidelines, but other than actually doing it, we're not going to know until we actually do it. So I'm not going to waste any time because we have got another trip. We've got to go work a diesel race. So if I want to get this thing any sort of looking good, we need to hop to it pretty quick. I've got some ideas. I'll show you some stuff along the way, but right now I think it's time to tack the first two pieces, which are going to be the reducers from 3-inch to 2.5. We're going to go 2.5 on the hot side. Last time in the Nova we did it with 3. I think that there is some to be gained with possible spool up time on the brake and that kind of stuff by going with the smaller diameter pipe. I mean, making the power wasn't an issue because in the Nova we could light this turbo up to 24 pounds in under a half second. It was 0.49 something whatever off the button and down track. So, but I think we can still gain a little bit there, so we're going to try that, plus it makes for an easier package. Let's get to it. We've got this side mocked up. Now normally these are like little slip fittings, right? I would normally cut those off and try to butt it and everything, but we needed the room. Like, as you can see, there's still a little play in here because these aren't tacked yet. I just thought, you know, yeah, it might look kind of silly having these slip welds on there, but it would probably come out a whole heck of a lot cleaner if we did it this way. Because the way that this works with the slip pipe, right? If the pipes weren't, every pipe would have to be perfect, and we'd have to nail every one, and I am not that good at cutting, and we don't have any kind of machine or equipment or anything to do that for us. So, but I'm really happy with the way this is right now. I'm really pretty happy with it. It looks good. I think that'll make for a good looking, decent looking turbo kit. It's got our, you know, it's got the room we need, the space. Even if we wanted to, hold on, now I gotta check, because I did check this yesterday. Right above this bar is the low part of the hood, and we have got, oh, we're close. We might have to do a hood check real quick. So So the next part of this is where it gets a little funky and a little tricky, right? Because it looks like that header is at a different angle and up higher than this one. Just trying to see, like, this one looks right maybe underneath the top of the head, and this one looks like it's definitely got some above the head. So in order to make this work and the way we have it set up, I gotta do something I really didn't want to do, just mostly because it is a significant amount of welding. But we've got the 2.5-inch pie cut kit, SHITBOX Supply. We're gonna have to pie kit this one out here to get us at the right height, which is gonna be roughly, oh here, I'll just set it down. It's gonna be tilted up a little bit, but we'll be able to tilt that one. We'll have that, and we'll go right into there. It's all just guesstimations, mathemations anyway. I was talking about doing this earlier, is cutting one of these sleeves off just so we can have the sleeve here and here. This allows us to kind of rotate the pipe and get it to fit, and then like on that one, I just sanded it down, kept sanding it down until it had a nice tight fit on there to where I felt good about any potential gap around there would make it easier to weld. Now, in order to weld the rest of this, I gotta take the flange off. So I wanna get this side complete, and that way I can weld the top of all of this, and then I can flip the whole thing, take the flange off, flip the whole thing upside down, weld it from the other side. I guess ain't nothing to it but to do it. I really wish there was a better way. The problem, if you don't know, the problem with using a straight 90 like this is when you cut it, if I were to cut it here at the height it would need to be, it would make the shape of this pipe no longer a circle. If you cut right in the middle of that bend like that, it's gonna come out ovaled. This one was very, very slightly ovaled, but it was fine enough that, you know, it fit in there nice and we were able to do it. So this is it. The only way that you're gonna learn and figure out how to do it is to just do it, and then do another one, and then do another one, and then do another one. So ain't nothing to it but to do it. Let's do it. Oh dang.
This is what the f I'd be doing at work.
Slide that joker up in there. That looks pretty damn good. I ain't mad at it. Alright, well me and Nick been working on this. We got it a lot welded on the top. We're at kind of a point where now some of the angles are going to be an issue, so we're probably going to pull this off to weld the underside and the rest of it. But while we're here, and while I got an extra set of hands to help me hold pipes and stuff, I think we're going to start seeing what this cold side can look like. I mean, I was envisioning somewhere like here. I wish that we could be up in close, but we're just not going to be able to with the flange and the radius of the pipe. So that still leaves us some room here to come off and go down with the wastegate. This one can come off and go down here. Actually, this side might be better because there's nothing there, right? This side we got to come off with the wastegate and go down. Now there we're working with something. Now there, I like that. What do you think about that? Huh? Huh?
So 45 or anything?
Yeah. We'll go about there to start. It's the mating call of these people. And a little more. And then if we shorten this pipe, ooh, I don't know, we're playing with some cold side configurations. At first I was thinking that side, and then brought me to this side was where we've ended up. But as you can see, like, these are not really fitted together super well. We might have to exhaust wrap this hot side because this is pretty close to the fiberglass there. I'm not quite sure that this is it just yet, but this is one possible configuration. But the little home-built turbo kit is coming together nice. Man, we get a couple more things lined out. This thing will be good to go. Well, we've tried a couple different iterations. We tried this side, I tried that side, and then I decided to go crazy with the what I call the F a front end, forget a front end, forget a hood iteration, which I think we're kind of forgetting a hood anyway at this point. But that would be something similar to this. I don't really know yet. I'm not sure how I feel about it. What I do know is that I don't think that we could get this. All right, timeout break. Let's put the front end on and see if it would even work. So as much as I love being a menace to society, the F a front end thing, we have to cut out a whole piece of that front end, and I just don't really want to do it. We could have done that had I not gone crazy with trying to get this thing front and center in the bumper, but everybody was like, front center in the bumper, front center in the bumper, and I just gave in to peer pressure. Had we wanted to do it that way, we could have put this thing back, I don't know, 6 to 8 more inches. The exhaust would have been tight. We probably still could have done it, but I think what's going to end up is going to be some kind of, this iteration I think is going to be what we're going to end up having to go with. I want to grab the exhaust off the Nova. It's going to be completely wrong, but it'll at least give us an idea of how big that 5-inch pipe could be, because we could essentially come out and just go straight out the side in 5-inch pipe. That would be pretty wild. I don't see many drag cars with 5-inch pipe out the side. I kind of wanted to get the exhaust pipe this side, so this way if there's anything blowing out of the exhaust, it'd be more in my view. But we're doing what we can with what we got, so I'm not too terribly mad at it, but unfortunately we're running out of time. I have got to get us packed up to go ahead and head to ODSS, Rocky Top Diesel Shootout number 10, happening this weekend. Those of you guys that are near Crossville, Tennessee, come by. We'll be there. We'll have the booth set up. Me and Brandon will be working. We'll be filming. We'll be doing stuff. Won't have a car there, but they are still doing small tire gas versus diesel stuff and a big payout, so it should be a good time, plus all the diesel races. So hopefully if you guys are in the area, I'll see you guys there. But if not, just know that this is going to be the last video until we can go work all weekend and then come back home and get back to work. I'm not sure what's next on the agenda. There's still a lot of work to do, and like I said, I don't have wastegates. I do still have to weld the bottom side of this. I've got it all tacked at the bottom, but I need to finish weld all of that. I need to finish weld all of this, which is going to be an astronomical nightmare to get in there, but I have a game plan, an idea. We're just going to try it. And yeah, it's coming along really, really well. I mean, I can't say enough about this project. It's been a good time. Mallory's been helping out, my brother's been helping out, Brandon's been helping out, lifting shit, moving shit around, holding this, doing that. I just realized that when we moved our motor, that our steering shaft is now a little in the way. Yeah, right there. So hopefully my steering shaft piece comes in. We can kind of figure out what needs to happen there. Man, it's a custom project, and none of this is, you know, some of it is off-the-shelf parts, off-the-shelf headers, but everything else is custom built. And you know, I'm trying to use as many off-the-shelf parts as I can just to save me time of having to try to fabricate all this stuff. But I'm looking at this right now, like I might be cutting that back out and moving it, re-welding it onto that plate just so we can get some proper clearance. But it's coming along real well. I'm super excited about the PO mod. I think this right here is this is quite an undertaking. I mean, we've gotten a lot checked off the list. There's still a lot more to come, and not a lot of time left until LS Fest. So, whew, man, we really need to get kicking in high gear, but working as much as we can to make it happen. I really appreciate you guys tuning in, leaving words of encouragement, little bits of advice, everything. I think what may end up happening here is I may call a buddy of mine, actually Chris, the guy who built the cold side for the Nova, give him a call and say, hey man, what do you think? Can you stop over here, maybe take a look? Maybe, I mean, I've tried it 4 or 5 different ways now, and I just can't find one that I'm super happy with, just because the angles, I mean, it's not perfect 90 degrees. It's not, this isn't perfect 45, whatever the case may be. So we're gonna get it figured out. But as always, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching, supporting the channel. I absolutely appreciate it. Y'all are the best. The POMOD is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be a really, really fun car when we're done with it. I'm very much looking forward to it. Still got a lot of parts on the way. Still got a lot of stuff we need to find and track down. But hey, ain't no quit. Too stupid to quit. We're gonna keep going. I'll see you guys next time.